I'm really excited to present our afternoon keynote speaker. We sort of shook it up this year and brought on some new ideas, new thinking. We're all deciding, listening to everyone in their challenges, their struggles around workforce development, that the multi-generations are presenting some challenges in the workplace, in the classroom. So last spring, Shana and Mary Kay and I were in San Antonio at the Chair Leadership Academy and heard this great keynote. So what I'm going to do today is introduce Mark Taylor. He is an award-winning speaker, recognized internationally as an educator, expert, and thought leader who is on the forefront of transformations in workplace management and educational practice. His work with organizations and companies focuses on helping people understand and work more effectively with the generational groups, especially our young people from Generation Next. Okay, Mark, it's all yours.
All right, okay. Oh, very generous, a round of applause, and I hadn't even done anything yet. I do appreciate that. Hello, Washington, how are y'all doing? I am, in fact, not from around here, and you might have figured that out. So I'm just going to ramble for just a minute while people get their minds around the accent. I do, in fact, talk like this. We did not get all of the introduction, which is probably best, because somewhere built into that is the notion that I received all of my graduate degrees from the University of Arkansas. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing about Arkansas? They do have Razorbacks on them, and they do have disclaimers on there. Possession of this degree in no way indicates endorsement. So that's okay. I do know that if you're from my part of the country and you have this accent, when I say Arkansas, I lose about 20 IQ points off the top. So I do want to show you I am, in fact, an internationally recognized expert on this generation of young people. I have published all of these straight-up academic, for-real articles. I'm not making any of this up. Now, we have clickers on the tables, too. Could I trouble each of you to pick up a clicker? Pick up a clicker. Just kind of get them distributed and have them in your hand if you don't mind. Everybody got one? Everybody got one? Okay, back at the screen. Quit looking at the clickers. Look at the screen. This is a very directive program. I will be telling you what to do pretty much every second of the program. Every second of the program. Put that down. Look up here. Just going to get myself some street cred with my articles here. I've written all these articles, wrote a bunch of articles about how, I wrote this article on helping these young people go into the workplace. Now, I spend about half my time with businesses on helping them bring young people successfully into the workplace and manage the multi-generational groups. And the rest of the time I spend with colleges and universities and training programs helping them get students better ready to go into the workplace. I'm actually playing both sides of the street. I help the colleges get them better ready, and if they're not ready, then I help the businesses bring them in. It's been a great business for about 10 years now. So I wrote this one. Where are my college people? Where are my college people? College people, college people. Okay, I wrote this one, submitted it for publication. They said, Dr. Taylor, it's twice too long. We wanted 3,000 words and you gave us 6,000 words. My college people, what did I do? I turned it into 2 articles. I cut it right down the middle. Right down the middle, a part 1 and a part 2. And the beauty is when they published this one, they had to publish this one because this one didn't tell them what to do. Now, I'm not going to say I recycled anything, but read that first line silently. Faculty struggle to effectively teach our traditionally aged students from same opening line twice. Did I say twice? They asked for a part 3, and I said, I'll give you a part 3. Faculty struggle to effectively teach. I just had one come out in November on flipping the classroom from the lecture model to research-based instruction. I have this crazy idea that colleges and universities should not teach just the way we've always taught because that's what we've always done, and maybe look at what does the research suggest helps students learn. My college people know that's a radical idea, and one of the main reasons I can no longer maintain full-time employment at a university. But I'm promoting that idea. I know you can't read it, but you know what the opening line of that article is? Now, faculty continue to struggle. I'm very proud of that, and I shouldn't admit, I just about published that article just to get that one line in print. And I am, in fact, a psychotherapist by training. My background is as a psychotherapist. And I think I kind of did something there. I kind of got y'all to laugh while we realized these young people are kind of a struggle. Faculty are struggling with them. A lot of workplaces are struggling with them too. Oh, we just talked about your clickers. Please get your clicker into your hand. Here's a question. There's your keypad. I want to know where you work. Do you work in industry? If you work in industry, hit the number 1 key. Unless you are a trainer in industry, in which case you're going to hit the number 2 key. If you work in a college or in education, hit the number 3 key. 1, 2, or 3 are the appropriate keys, and the industry people are going to have to do some discrimination. College people don't have to make any choice at all. So hit a button there. Where do you work? Just trying to figure out who I'm talking to. Okay, doing a little quick math. 64% of y'all involved in education in some way. 36% of y'all mainly focused on the leadership part. I'm making the assumption that all y'all are involved in leadership in some way. I have a plan. We're moving forward. Going to talk about the 4, maybe 5 generational groups that we have in America right now. And folks, it is an amazing time to be alive. It's especially amazing if you consider the alternative. But it's amazing generationally because we have never had 4 groups so dramatically different from one another trying to get along in the same space at the same time. Our oldest group is leaving and taking some real valuable stuff with them, and so this time is not going to last much longer. Just foundationally, we are each the member of one of these generational groups. And do you know how you get to be the member of a generational group? You get born at a certain time, and then you grow up with the values that characterize that time. We each tend to carry those values of the time. And it turns out the people who grew up in the 30s and 40s and 50s, they're different than those of us that are the children of the 60s and 70s, different than the youngsters who came up in the 80s and 90s, and very different than this group from next who came up later than that. I'm talking about whole groups of people. These are not stereotypes. These are not overgeneralizations. I'm an old social research scientist, and there is such a thing as social research, by the way. And so we talk about the modal traits. See, you got 3 measures of central tendency: the mean, the median, and the mode. I don't like the average. I don't like the middle score. I like the mode, most frequently occurring. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Typical traits. It does not apply to every person in the group. I'm not saying everyone is like this, but if you take people who typify each group. This is how they're different. Now, in the times we grew up in, we think we're normal. We think the way we came up is how folks are supposed to think. So we see folks from another group and we're like, what is wrong with them? How come they don't see the world the way I do? I come in from the weekend and say, hey, how was your weekend? And my young coworker says, why are you asking me that? I'm not really here to talk about my weekend. Let's talk about the project. I'm like, why don't they want to be friends? My young coworker is thinking, why don't they want to do any work? So we have these issues. We have these issues. It doesn't apply to everybody, but it offers us a starting place, really, for understanding ourselves, how we may be perceived by other people. And I've talked about this a lot. And what I hear is, oh yeah, you described Martha perfectly. But when I get to your group, you're going to say, oh, I don't know if that sounds like me at all. And your coworkers are going to go, oh, you got Bob perfectly. That is exactly Bob. Here's my graph. Here are my 4 groups. Y'all graph in Washington State? Is graphing something you're familiar with? Good. This line across the bottom, some people call that the x-axis. I call it across the bottom. That is year. From the Depression all the way up to the 2000s. The number up the side, number of babies born in America in that year. I'm going to give everybody a minute to do the math. Okay, there I am, 1963, ba-bam. Okay, found myself. From a low of barely 2 million babies back in the Depression to look at that 1960, almost 4.5 million babies. I don't know if y'all remember the 60s. Babies were thick on the ground. When I was growing up, you could not swing a dead cat and not hit a baby. They were everywhere. This is Washington. Y'all may not be a cat-swinging people as we are in my part of the country. I apologize for that. Huge bunch of people, and then a decline in the birth rate. This line right here is what really got me interested in that graph. Because, y'all know where babies come from? Do you know how a society gets a lot of babies? No? Well, let me explain. You got to have a lot of people doing that specific activity that brings about babies. Let's move on. Think about the mid-70s. All of these people are getting old enough to the age people at that time traditionally had kids. And a lot of y'all don't remember the 70s, but those of us who do remember, it was a good time. It was the disco era. It was post-Vietnam. We had all the privileges and none of the fear. Donna Summer's Love to Love You Baby. There's no subtext there, people. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying demographically it was a great time. How do you have all those people getting so jiggy with it and no babies? Oh, that is such a simple answer. I had expected so much more. Really? Birth control was only a mechanism. People had known how to prevent pregnancy forever. The real big deal was in this era, for the first time, people had permission to not have kids. We'd never seen that before. All of us born in here, don't flatter yourself. They might not have wanted kids, but that was their job. Y'all may not remember the 60s, but if a young woman was not married by 22 or 23, people would talk about them. Somebody got married and there was not at least a bun in the oven by a year, people would talk about you. The social messages were very strong. In the 70s, people had permission to not have kids. There was a pharmaceutical mechanism to prevent having kids, and there were a lot of other options to having kids. So I say this with love, but kids fell out of popularity. 60s, babies stick on the ground. 73, could not give a baby away. And then they got popular again. What we have, here's popularity. What we have is 4 very different generational groups trying to get along. We still have a few of the traditionals kicking around. The people born before 19 and 45. Hardly any of them left, because the younger, about 71 or 72, just to kind of give some of my punchlines away, I advocate trying to get them back. We probably need some of them back. Then there's my group, the group born between 45 and 65, the baby boom, the demographic pig in the python that we've heard so much about, the baby boom, the generation against which all other generations are judged and found lacking. It's a boomer world, and the rest of y'all just living in it. Love us. Be like us. All your dreams will come true. Then there was this sad time when kids fell. I'm going there. That's how it's going to go. When kids fell out of popularity. What do we even call that group? We call them X. You know why we call them X? We couldn't even be troubled to come up with a clever name. We were busy. We had so much other stuff going on. We said, we'll put an X in, we'll come back later, we'll fix it up. We never fixed it up. It was kind of like your birthday. We meant to do more but did not. And then babies got popular again. The culture kind of got used to the changes that took place in here, and here's this brand new group that I call Gen Next. Other people have called them millennials. Have you heard of millennials? Have you ever seen a millennial? I'm an academic, and I'm about to go straight up academic on you. Get ready. The term millennial was coined by Howard Strauss, and he said that they said they started in about 1980, which would mean the members of this youngest cohort are up to about 36 years old. Number one, that's wrong, because 36-year-olds look way more like Xers than they do this new generation. Number two, Howard Strauss said this new generation are going to be conventional conformists, hardworking, respectful of social norms and institutions. In colleges, achievement-oriented, hardworking, and looking to adults for guidance and supervision. And I said, where do you work? Nobody I know is seeing that. So I started writing about Gen Next. I started writing about an American cohort of young people that's a little different profile. And guess what? Got so popular, had to quit the day job. And it turns out, in the last couple years, they have carried me to Ireland, Denmark, and Australia because they're seeing the same thing in their kids. Now, if you're in the workplace, the big demographic story is we boomers are somewhere between about 71 and 51 years old. We're leaving. Many of us meant to leave earlier, but who would we talk to? We don't really have anything else to do. We would rather come to work and bother you youngsters. Look at that line. There are just not enough of you Xers to take our place. And every industry group I work with, from physicians and nurses to the utility industry, to the plasterers and cement finishers, to engineers, to architects, to pilots, I hear the same thing over and over. The boomers are leaving and there aren't enough of these people to take their place, and these folks aren't ready. What are we gonna do? I just came from a big pilots meeting. We got about a 10,000 pilot shortage right now. They about to start flying these big planes with one pilot, and the cargo planes, they're gonna be drones. They're going to be a 747 from UPS with the drone people. What are we going to do? Well, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get these people better ready to go to work. That's the bottom line of what we have to do. I'm not going to talk about immigration. Don't talk about immigration. But that was helping us. May not be as helpful in the near future as it was at one time. So we really don't have much choice. We can stay. We boomers can stay longer. We're happy to do that. But that's the big dilemma. How are we just going to get the jobs done? There is some data that shows that when one of these people leave, it takes 1.9 of these people to take their place. So just the numbers are not really working out for us. Automation is going to do a lot. The robotization of industry is going to do a lot. But that's what we really have to address. And so, if you're involved in workforce development on any level, what we're talking about is how do we get these people ready to move into those jobs. Now, Xers, any ideas jumping out at you right now that you see this graph? You might recognize, anybody here born 7234? Anybody born 7234? OMG, I wish I were you. The world is your oyster. People are going to want you so badly. Much worse than they ever wanted any of us. But moving on. I'm going to drill into those four groups. Let's pretend that each of those groups had a number affiliated with them. And let's pretend that you had a clicker. Wait a minute, 2 people have clicked in already. What is that? I hadn't even asked a question yet and 2 people clicked in. Focus up, people. Of which cohort are you a member? If you were born before 1945, hit the number 1 key because you are a traditional. If you're one of my people, 45 to 65, and these are birth year, not ages. Turns out I've confused people about this before. Birth year 45, 65, you're a boomer, hit the number 2 key. 65, 86, hit the number 3 key for you are an Xer, bless your heart. If you're born after 1986, you may in fact be an Xer, even though that is a very fuzzy line right there. Hound Strauss would move it all the way over to 80. As time goes on, I keep moving it farther up this way. I think this generation's up to about 26 years old. But let's see who's here. And this next reveal is going to tell me how the rest of this program is going to go. Come on, boomers. Come on, boomers. Come on, boomers. Woo! Yay, yay, yay. Boomers, we are still large and in charge. Yay. We do, for now. For now. We have to watch out, though, because these people are coming up. Coming up. I go to universities now, and universities have an older demographic. Universities let people stay around longer. I've been to some schools to where it's even. And a lot of industries, the Xers have taken over. which is, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Messed up. Because organizations tend to have atmospheres based on who's in charge. Mark, I do not have time for this digression, but I feel myself going here anyway.
Here we go.
Any of y'all remember when the traditionals were in charge? Use your words, yes or no? Okay. You remember the place was kind of formal? A lot of times people used last names. Hierarchies were real strong. You didn't talk to anybody more than one step above or below you. The rules were super strict. That was a traditional organization. When we boomers came in, it all got real kind of horizontal and collegial, started using first names. Everybody got friendly. How you doing? How's your mom and them? Had an atmosphere. When you Xers take over, it's going to have a different kind of atmosphere. It is an atmosphere that works for your people, Xers. Does not work for us. Does not work for these people. And so one of my big messages today is going to be, we boomers are leaving. We're leaving you Xers in charge, and you know who you're going to be in charge of? These people. The way you interact with each other is the opposite of what either of our groups want. So, the Xers who learn how to, what's the phrase? I'm just making this up, but who learn to defy their natural tendencies and how to relate to this group of people are going to own the world. And the companies that are already figuring that out are the highest valued companies in America now. The Amazons and the Yahoos and the Googles and the Ubers, those are the places that get it. Xers, at the end of the day, you will get it. I guess I'll take some questions if anybody wants to make a comment.
As a Gen Xer, I was of the generation where when I first joined the workforce, I was expected to have 2 years experience for my entry-level job. And there were definitely goals for how productive I was right from the very start. And you seem to be advocating a very different business mentality to approach these nexters. Are you seeing that business is actually turning that way? Is it like the few and far between? How do we change that mentality?
So the point was made that I am advocating a slower, more developmentally oriented bringing of young people into the workplace than what most of us were presented with when we started full-time employment. You know, and I advocate something between no employment, unpaid internship, and full-time employment. You know, there are some folks who are leveraging that. They're kind of looking more now like paid internships, and that's, you know, maybe the easiest way to think about it would be a paid part-time internship that rolls into full-time employment. But that's my recommendation. Sir?
Yeah, I have a question about the Generation 2.0.
2.0, yes.
Yeah, because a lot of pictures we have seen nowadays, the next 8 people, they sit on the table all around and then they just look at the cellular phone. They don't talk to each other. But the next the generation 2.0, I hope my prediction is not right, because virtual reality is on the rise, and then they don't differentiate the reality versus the virtual things. And then will those generation 2.0 will be more withdrawal, from the reality?
Did y'all hear that question? Hear that question? It was a notion about digital engagement as opposed to connecting with reality, which might reflect a semi-generational perspective on what is reality and whether the virtual is or is not a reality. We think it is not real. It is very real for them. To bring it into the workplace, and you just had a governor here who used to be a politician, so I'm just going to wade heavily all over everything. American jobs have not been lost to immigrants. American jobs have been lost to automation. That is the virtual world. Many would argue that these young people are infinitely more suited to adapting our workplace to the reality of those new tools than the rest of us are. And those of us who believe that there is a divide between the virtual and the real might struggle with those ideas of how to adjust to this new reality. Look at us, together now. Why? So we can do this. So we can do this. This still has a value to us. I don't know if we'll be doing this in 20 years. May not be coming together like this in 20 years. So I would encourage us to expand our thinking and recognize how different these generational worlds have been, and try to predict, just remember back the technological sophistication we had of 25 years ago, and who thought we'd be here now. My real question is, where is my flying car? But think about the next leap. The next leap. It's not going to be this. It's going to be the new generation of Google Glass. Jet pilots don't look at dials anymore. It's all... So let's, as with everything, let's try to embrace. Let's not see this as the enemy. Let's embrace. It's their third hand, which would be freaky if I had one. Yeah, he has the microphone, so it's not up to me.
One of the things that we were talking about with my son is that he grew up not knowing a world that was not post 9/11. So for him, it's normal that you have to go through long lines in security in airports, and he has metal detectors at his school, and the thought of terrorism is a constant thing in the news. Do you think that will impact Generation 2.0?
Question and answer sessions for me often turn into question not answer sessions, because I am very reluctant to make anything up. I think that I talk to a lot of young people, and I think that there is a lot of normalness to a lot of that 9/11 stuff, but for some reason I feel like it's almost parallel to when a lot of us boomers were being trained to duck and cover. Okay? It was kind of something out there, but it really didn't impact our daily lives. It's not like there was a part that was gnawing at 6-year-old me thinking that this bomb was going to drop. And I don't know that that is a significant contributor to the anxiety that I show. I show the anxiety in today's young people. And the key part of that answer is I don't know. Okay? But it seems to be kind of an umbrella thing that may not be impacting them that much at the micro level, if that makes sense. Do you see them as really individually worried about it? I'm seeing a lot of distress in some young people of this generation following the election that feels very personal to many of them, more so than that 9/11 terrorist thing. But that's just the people I come into contact with.
You know, the industry sectors that are represented here today, one of our paramount concerns is workplace safety and kind of a no-fault following of dealing with rules. But across the generations that you've spoken us today, how do we really go about addressing each of those generations to actually get that type of compliance that we need and maybe even get better compliance than we have in the past?
Well, did you hear that question? Safety issues across the generations? What a coincidence, I've keynoted safety conferences. Here's the quick answer. Traditionals, best followers ever. If you want safety compliance, bring some traditionals in to monitor safety compliance. Baby boomers often don't think the rules apply to us, so we are often non-compliant with safety issues. If you want boomers to comply, say we need you to help take care of the other people, and then they will comply. It's not just about you, it's taking care of the team. Sometimes Gen Xers' pragmatism lead them to not follow safety concerns because it takes so much time. That needs to be fixed. I can run up that pole and fix it and come back down, and it'll take me 20 minutes. It'll take me 30 minutes to do all the safety stuff, so I'm just going to run up there. So with those people, you just have to say, if you don't follow the safety concerns, there will be consequences. Black and white, nuts and bolts. With Gen Nexters, I would watch them. I would watch them very, very carefully for a long time. That's my answer on safety. Thank you very much. Somebody else have a mic?
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Hi, I'm a Gen Xter myself. I'm 26. I was in 5th grade when 9/11 happened.
Can I stop you right there?
Sure, go ahead.
I am so glad that you spoke, because what I meant to say is people in your age group, there's a line. I kind of draw a line right in there. If you felt like, if you or anyone you know felt like you had to struggle to keep up with a busy family, you're probably like X. If you felt like the family revolved around you, you might be more like next. So we see a lot of variation in your age group, and I'm not asking you a question, I'm just using you as an opportunity to say that. What's your question?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that too. I'm a Gen Xer, but kind of an X. My question pertains to, I'm a scientist, so data-driven. You showed us a couple graphs, and I'm assuming it was used through surveys that you came up with these answers, and I'm wondering, what population did you survey? Are you including first-generation Americans, such as myself, where I came from a mother that comes from a different country? So my experiences and how I work and how I serve my community are very different than that of a person that was, raised by a family that's multiple generation in the U.S.
Okay, and you make a very good point that there is a lot of variation within all of these groups. People whose history is not in this country, there can be some variations. What I kind of touched on a little bit earlier is, having presented this content in other countries, it turns out that countries who had a baby boom after World War II had some real similar cycles. Okay? The countries that did not tended to see different cycles. And immigrant non-native families have often had other experiences. And we can talk about what those are, but the variation is so great, I'm reluctant to do that. Kind of there, in a lot of other cultures, there have been a lot more multi-generational families, so there's a lot more multi-generational influence, and I'm getting it. I should just go with I don't know and move on.
I'm at the.
Where are you?
I'm in 1948, so almost at the line of that tradition versus baby boomer. Anyway, family business. It looks like the generation that you're in doesn't work well with the next generation in any of those combinations. So should I fire my son and hire my granddaughter?
I don't know your family personally, but what I can interpolate from having just heard you speak this amount of time is that you should hire them both. You'll probably need them both.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. So I have a question. You talk a lot about the generational communication and how to bridge that. When you were talking about the sexual harassment issues and the micro sexual harassment, I can't remember what word you used, and it's a very hard line to tell them to stop it. But I come from the trades. I have a background in the trades, so working as a lineman or a line worker, encountering folks who simply, as the workers, because they are the teachers. 95% of the time are the craftsmen out in the field, that they simply maybe weren't trying to be offensive, but simply didn't have the skills to teach outside of the cultural norm that they learned in. And an example would be working in a bucket with another man where we have to be in very close proximity, and having him be extremely uncomfortable touching me, or being where two men would be pressed against each other, reaching out to hold a wire or whatever. That there was some discomfort, and I've had conversations where I've been able to bring that out. And it just makes me wonder how much more often we have situations like that, and how do you bridge that teaching, that communication?
And I really appreciate that you brought that up. I got through that pretty quick, and I went pretty quickly to the death sentence from here we are today, which is not the most accepting attitude about that. My perspective is, of course, everybody is where they are now as a result of what's happened to them up to this point that was maybe largely not their fault, okay? These people you're talking about were socialized into this culture, and so, not helpful to blame them either. So probably some kind of developmental education around how can we be a more accepting place for all kinds of workers before we go straight in to hanging somebody because they called somebody sweetie. So you make a good point. A developmental approach is to kind of address where they're coming from with that, as opposed to just firing a bunch of people. It's probably a good plan. And I'm glad you shared that.
So I think we're about at the end of our time. Thanks for coming back on, Dr. Taylor.
Not a problem.
I'm glad that everybody's so engaged in this. This is kind of a new thing to try a whole afternoon of one single topic. So thank you all.
Don't think it's going to work again.
Well, we'll go to
I don't think you can do this
We'll
with
go to
somebody
Arkansas
else.
next time. Thanks for a great day.
Yeah.